In 1974, Congress passed the law that was supposed to protect every American retirement, and buried inside 1,700 pages of legislative text was a three-line exemption that no one in the hearing room ever put their name on. No floor speech. No sponsor on record. No one has ever explained who wrote it or why it was there. That question matters more today than it ever has. Before 1974, pension funds in America operated with almost no federal oversight. Companies could promise their workers a comfortable retirement, collect decades of contributions, and then declare bankruptcy, taking every cent with them. Studebaker did exactly that in 1963. 24,000 workers lost most of what they were owed. Congress said it would never happen again. They passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA. It was supposed to be a shield. Every major news outlet called it a victory for American workers. Senators held press conferences. The president signed it on Labor Day, and it was in many ways a real protection, but not for everyone. Hidden inside ERISA was a provision called the Top Hat Exemption. 3 lines. A pension plan designed primarily for a select group of management or highly compensated employees is exempt from virtually all of the law's protections. Exempt from vesting requirements. Exempt from funding rules. Exempt from the government insurance that protects ordinary retirees. The people who wrote the bill said it was a narrow carve-out, a minor technicality for a handful of executives. Now watch what happens next. By 1985, corporations had quietly begun reclassifying their pension structures. They created a second tier, informal, unreported, operating entirely outside federal protection. These accounts carried no legal obligation to pay. If the company went under, the workers in these plans received nothing. But something even stranger was happening on the other side of that same exemption, and the amounts involved were not small. The official explanation, when anyone asked, was that executives simply needed retirement flexibility that standard plans couldn't provide. Highly paid employees hit the contribution limits too fast. The government said the top hat exemption was a practical accommodation. Reasonable people, they said, would understand. But the IRS has never required these plans to register, has never required disclosure of their total value, has never required the company to fund them in advance. The money doesn't have to exist until the day it's owed, and the people who designed the exemption knew exactly what that meant. Because 3 years after ERISA passed, the same committee quietly inserted a second provision into a separate tax bill, one that nobody was watching. In 1978, a mechanism was embedded inside the Revenue Act, not as a standalone reform, but tucked inside a broader omnibus bill covering dozens of unrelated topics. What it created was a structure for corporations to promise pension-level payouts to executives using unfunded deferred compensation accounts. Accounts that existed on paper, earned interest on paper, were backed by nothing but the company's word. And here is what makes this impossible to explain away: ordinary workers cannot use these structures. Federal law explicitly prohibits it. The plans are legal only for the top 5% of earners at any given company. The same legislators who championed ERISA as a worker protection created a parallel system, invisible to regulators, inaccessible to the people on the floor. The amounts held in these accounts by 2004, when Congress finally moved to tighten the rules, had grown to an estimated $400 billion. $400 billion, sitting in informal promises off the balance sheet, governed by nothing except the goodwill of the people who owed it. Many of those companies restructured. Some went bankrupt. In bankruptcy court, top hat account holders are treated as general creditors, last in line. Workers who spent 30 years assuming they had a protected retirement were handed pennies on the dollar. The people who benefited from the silence were not the executives whose accounts evaporated in bankruptcy. They were the corporations that carried those liabilities off book for decades, and the institutional investors who bought shares without knowing the true debt load. The workers who lost the most were not the ones at the top. They were mid-level managers and long-tenured employees who had been told verbally that they were covered. Nothing in writing. That was by design, because a written plan triggers disclosure requirements. An informal arrangement triggers nothing. The pattern holds across industries, energy companies, retail chains, airline carriers. In every case, the same structure. In every case, the same outcome when the company hit trouble. And in every case, that same buried paragraph from 1974 standing quietly in the background, making it all perfectly legal. The code wasn't a mistake. It was a door left open on purpose. What we still don't know is who first drafted those 3 lines. ERISA's legislative history runs to thousands of pages. The top hat exemption appears without a sponsor's name attached. Without a floor speech, without a committee vote on record, someone wrote it. Someone made sure it stayed in the final bill, and whoever they were not thinking about you.